Dort. This is Lee Dort, and I'm down to dunk. This is Lee Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
I'm Josh Giddey, and I'm down to dunk.
Hey, this is Kenny Hustle, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Darius Baisley, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Mike Muscala, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Poku, and I'm down to dunk.
I love cereal. Captain Crunch, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Cracklin' Oat Bran.
Oh, I can have these? I'm going to share with my team, but I'm going to hog most of it.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlacht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me on Friday, it's later. Taylor can't join. L-Man's on a phone call. I've got Jay.
It's Jay.
It is Jay.
Well, it's so for those of you that don't live here in Oklahoma. So today it's March 11th, and we woke up to I bet it gets over 3 inches of snow on the ground here, which is very abnormal for us. And so this morning I'm just going to vent for a second since it's just you and me. So last night we had we always have a text message that says pod ? And everybody's like, yeah, sure. And, I'd been watching the forecast because I have a son that's in school. And so virtual day, snow day. Anyway, so I knew that we would be in probably for a snow day. And then I get up, literally wake up at 5, get in my car, and I'm about 5 minutes away from my house. And then Luke sends a text that says, it's really snowy outside. I'm not coming.
You were in your car.
My car.
I didn't know that you were on your way.
Yes, man. That's why I was so mad. So, and then I look like a crazy person on YouTube. I'm going to hopefully get my hair cut here in a bit.
Haircut.
And, I didn't want to put all the product in it to make me. So I'll just do this. Apparently,
it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, man.
And
How
a good
are you,
reason.
Andrew, what's up, man?
That's a good reason to subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. Is
You
to
should.
see his hair. I'm good. It is wild. It's the 2-year anniversary of the Rudy Gobert has COVID. Stop the game. Do not let them play basketball day. 2 years.
Yeah,
feels like 4.
It does. And things feel more hopeful today, I think, than a while. Man, I think it was before the Monday podcast, man, just recognizing there is a lot of heaviness going on in our world. And so just mindfulness of that. But I think that there are also these pockets for hope that isn't always just because we want to live naively to the realities of the world. And one of the things is at least here in Oklahoma, this pandemic is in one of the most substantial retreats since those 2 years. And so anyway, but it was one of those things where, I'll never forget where I was. So were you in the arena that night or were you home?
I was at home. My wife was not. My wife wasn't feeling good. So I stayed home. I'm glad I did because the people that were at the arena were there forever.
All night.
Yeah. I just couldn't believe it. I was sitting there watching on TV and I was like, why aren't they tipping the ball? What's going on here? Yeah. And I had just started at the Athletic 2 days prior. And I got to cover 2 days of basketball.
And then the whole world,
then it all shut down.
It's one of the things that was crazy is we didn't have sports for 5 months.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where, I listened to a ton of sports podcasts. And so it's everybody, you want to talk about a prolonged desert. It's what else could they talk about? Constantly the same exact things. And so, I don't know. It's crazy. 2 years. 2 years. It does feel like it was forever and just a few days ago.
Yeah.
But we're here, we're healthy, and I know not everybody gets to say those things, and so there's at least a spirit of gratitude we get to kind of move forward with, and so and there's tons of sports on, literally everywhere. There's I don't know, do you watch? I know you do a lot of draft stuff, and with OSU's ridiculous postseason suspension, but I watched probably the most college basketball I've watched all season last night when I watched the Baylor OU game, and OU won, which was great.
That was cool. Yeah, Baylor's
And-
good. Baylor's really good.
Yeah, well, and OU is just like I've watched off and on all season and pay attention to box scores. College basketball is just really hard to watch, man.
Yeah,
Like just
it
full disclosure, I tried to watch that Duke North Carolina game, the last Coach K game, and I was just like, even with Duke's got what 3 guys that are top 25, top 30 first round draft picks,
They've got 3 guys that will go in the top 15 or 16 probably. Yeah.
and it's still really hard to watch. So, but
Yeah, I don't watch full games typically. I'm usually just watching like synergy clips of guys where you can just zero in on one guy.
right, yeah,
So-
which is this is years ago, but I mentioned like maybe I should get a Synergy account, and you're like, it's really expensive.
$1,000. I know. Yeah, I would not have one if not for the Athletic.
It's already hard to justify like most of the time or energy I spend towards basketball, like, and
Yeah.
then to add like financial, like I haven't gotten to the point where I've started to ask like for presents. Hey, for my Christmas presents, can I get league pass for the year? But it's like, anyway, but
Natalie, is it okay if I drop $1,500 on synergy?
yeah, it doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah, that would not be cool.
It's also, go ahead. I know you're trying to lead us somewhere. I was just going to say that you
I
all
know.
you all jinxed SGA.
Badly. Yeah, I actually went back and watched all of his possessions again this morning just to see like what's going on. And his rhythm was just a little bit off. I mean, that's just a lot of it because they were defending him well. They defended him the same way they defended him the last time. It just worked this time. And I mean, there were a lot of shots that just like went in and out. It was just not his night. And he just wasn't playing with like the same pop that he had been. I don't know you can be tired on the second night of a back-to-back. That's possible.
You could also be tired for being the only legitimate basketball player on the floor for your team for
Yeah.
2 weeks straight.
Yeah. Speaking of that, the Thunder have fallen to 15th in defense.
Perfect.
And they are still the worst offense in the league by a not an insignificant margin. They are 28th in net rating. I was looking at the defense too, just like the last. Let's put the last 7 games, they're 29th in net rating. They are 29th in defense in the last 7 games.
Wow.
They are 28th in offense, but that's only because the Blazers and the Magic have been pretty bad. The Blazers have a 97 offensive rating in the last 7 games. Oh, trivia for you.
Now, for me,
Who has the number 1 defense in the last 7 games?
man, that's a great question. So the obvious one to me is the one that it's not going to be. So that's why I'm like trying to think harder than it probably should be. Best defense in the last 7 games. Man,
You're not going to get it.
I know. So now I'm like the Pistons.
You're close in just that it's a really horrible team. It's the Orlando Magic.
Oh, okay.
They actually have the 7th best defense in the last 15 games. So there's
I
something.
don't even know who's on there. Like, I don't know who plays for them. So you've got Suggs, Wagner. Is Markelle Fultz back?
The other Wagner. Yeah. Fultz
Mo
is back.
Wagner. They're brothers?
Yeah.
Okay. Just
Yeah.
you never know. There's bridges in the family that are not brothers.
2 random guys with the last name Wagner that you pronounce Wagner. Are they brothers?
2 German Wagners. And then you've got
Wendell Carter,
okay. And
Your guy-
then
Cole Anthony,
oh man.
Bamba.
Is Bamba starting?
Yeah.
Is Jonathan Isaac just out all season, I assume? I mean, at this point, there's 18 games left, I guess.
You'd assume so. Yeah, we haven't seen him at all.
Yeah, Alex Bolderjack.
It's sad.
Bowlerjack, excuse me. He said the Celtics. That's who I was going to guess, but it was too easy. That's who I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, they've fallen off a little bit. But yeah, it's just weird.
Did you watch that Nets game last night?
That was wild.
It was wild. Like,
It had a familiar taste to it, as an OKC fan, seeing seeing Kevin Durant come into a hostile environment and just dominate. We've seen that.
Well, and James Harden just disappearing also had a very familiar
It did.
feel.
Yeah, it did. Ben Simmons just not playing at all had a familiar feel.
That's
It's
the
just-
truth. Kyrie playing, not very familiar.
Yeah, true.
He looked great too in the parts that I watched.
He's been awesome lately.
It was such a beatdown. I switched over to college basketball. I was like, this is real bad. And Tobias Harris, man, like,
yeah,
you
man,
can't make that much money be such a non-factor.
he does it.
Pretty a familiar thing.
Another familiar feeling. Tobias Harris, just doing things that Jeff Green does. You know,
for $40 million more or whatever
Right.
it is a year. So what do you? So let me ask this question. So I wanted to pose this to you and Alex, and then I know there's some questions that you all have posted or Twitter questions, and so I've only got like 15 minutes, so I won't take long. Dude, I probably and part of this is maybe Alex having too much influence over my Thunder thinking. I don't know what this team. I think you're both right in saying that this team is still a lottery team next year.
yeah,
But I don't know how they continue on trying. I don't think they have a chance for a bottom 5 pick next year without tremendous misfortune or a tremendous lottery luck, right? So either a season that is legitimately lost because of injuries, or it's going to be something where they have the 9th or 10th best odds and they jump. Like the Grizzlies. I don't remember what the Grizzlies were when they ended up getting Ja, or I don't actually remember what the Pelicans were when they got Zion, but they actually weren't as bad as they should have been, which is the flattened odds. But
yeah.
you know, how do you do you think, and I know you have your finger on the pulse of the organization better than most, maybe everybody. So, I mean, is any of this changing? And I'm not saying like overall the goals for Sam. I know what he wants to do. Like he's been very clear about that. But is any of this team's overachieving consistently, even though they're not very good? Like they're still the 4th worst team in the league. Like I get all of those things, but they've had to pull some pretty substantial lever to get them to be this bad. Whether they're fortunate in the sense of misfortune, injuries, right? Or if it's just, hey, some of these surgeries are just things that could have waited to the off season, but we're going to go ahead and do it right now. And so I just am asking that question of whether or not you think Sam is at least maybe altering any of his takes or thinking. He won't change anything in his thinking, but
Yeah.
what does the future, the next 2 years look like for this team? I guess is the ultimate question. Is Sam changing his mind about any of that?
I honestly do not know if he is. If I were to guess, I would say that he is not. I would think that the plan would still be to build as slowly as possible with this roster. And I don't know exactly what that looks like. Maybe it does involve some kind of trade this summer where you do take a step back with regards to like talent for potential. You know, I don't know if they would trade like Kenrich or Dort or somebody like that this summer in an effort to move up or an effort to acquire another future pick. I don't know if they do that or not, but I would be pretty surprised if they looked at this roster and they'd be like, all right, time to go. You know, I just don't, they're not there yet. This is a team that if you press go and you add a couple pieces, like you're in the middle, like welcome to the middle, which is where you're going to be for the entire life of this roster.
Right?
So
maybe like without a shocking jump, right, from somebody, right? We think Shea is I would say like a 1.5, right?
yeah,
I think we're cautiously optimistic that he could be that guy. And there are moments where you see it, like his efficiency up until that Timberwolves game on jump shots, taking with the defense. He has some craftiness offensively that's just astounding. And then to hear Vicini and mention that in the podcast you talked about, where he actually was even higher than you were, I think that's encouraging too. But you're still looking for that generational guy. And so there's part of me that thinks, now, if you hit this year, if you get the fortune, like everybody's on Tankathon, I did it like 4 times this morning. One time I got 1. 4 times I got 7. One time I got 3. And I don't want to get too much into this, but I know you and Alex are firmly in the Chet corner. I'm still a Jabari guy. I think Jabari is my guy. Anyway, but so all that to say that if they hit, then it could shift some of that next year. But I don't know. I watched this team, and without like substantial levers, they're already in the middle.
They're not. They're in the. I mean,
yes,
they're not that good. They're the worst offense in the league, like by far.
Yeah,
All
I just think there's part of it. It's because of the intentional roster construction that they would be that way. Like if somebody was if you had the Wizards franchise mindset with this team, and they thought at the trade deadline, we're going to add blank center, or we're going to go out for Miles Turner. We're going to go. All of a sudden, this team goes from the 4th worst team. And not really. What's crazy too is y'all talked about this on Wednesday. Is in the West, it's not that far from the middle now, which is abnormal. It's a different season, right? The Lakers are really bad, and they're still in the 9 seed in the play-in tournament. So it is a little bit closer just this year, but I don't know. I just think that there would be a way to pull this team in the middle, which I'm really thankful that Sam doesn't want to do that. But man, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I still don't feel like they're that close. I feel like a lot of people think they're a lot. For whatever reason, we think they're a lot closer than they are. I think if they want to compete for a title, if that's the goal, they are very, very far away.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Roster construction. If we're talking about competing to get the 10th seed, like nobody's too far away from that.
You're right.
So,
and I think there's maybe somewhere in between is what I'm really thinking about, but I think you're right. I think from a championship contention, which is fine. Even if they had what they think is their core 3, it's still 3, 4, 5 years away from that reality, more than likely.
Yeah. I mean,
and I think
their core 3.
No. I think you have 2 that we feel pretty confident with being a part of that core, and then I think everything else is an evolution. And Poku, I'm kind of bought back in on the idea of what Poku could be, but there's not a part of me that thinks so generational guy that's waiting in the wings. I'm like, no, he became a relatively mediocre basketball player in the last, week or 2.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I just have been thinking a lot about the Thunder because I'm trying to watch these games, and dude, it's back to that dog days, man, where it's like, if it wasn't for my specific interest in watching guys like Poku, and then now because I just kind of like him personally, Lindy Waters, if it wasn't for me wanting to watch those 2 guys play, I would not be watching this team very regularly.
Well, and Shea too. That's what we didn't have last year that we have now, so we get to watch Shea with these guys. And I mean, honestly, there's just not a lot of NBA talent on the Thunder right now, especially like when Trey went out. It's like, oh boy, that's like Trey's like an NBA bench guy for most teams. Like that's great, but after that, it's like who would on this team besides Shea would play on any playoff roster?
This team that's currently playing.
Yeah, it's like none, right?
No. Like your best bet is maybe Trey Mann, but probably not. He's so inconsistent.
Maybe Darius if they need like somebody that can defend.
Yeah, he's actually been relatively surprising to me in kind of low post defense. Like I thought he did decent against Giannis in a few spots, which is about as good as you can do against Giannis.
Yeah, Giannis still just trucked him.
I know. He trucks everybody. Yeah. He's unreal. You watch that game. Were you there in person?
Uh-huh.
What's it like watching a guy like Giannis play in person, like that close? Is he bigger than you even realize?
He's a monster. I mean, whenever we have like the hopes of like, man, like maybe Darius could be Giannis, or like maybe like Poku could be our Giannis. It's like, I don't think people realize like how big his shoulders are. Like, in person, I think I think you could put two Pokus side by side and it would fit inside, like barely fit inside the width of Giannis. I mean, he is
like Dwight Howard with athleticism, more athleticism.
Yes, he's like Dwight Howard with fluidity, and he was hitting threes. He's way bigger than everybody. He's way more skilled than everybody. He's really something, man. Yeah, he is one of one. You know, if you're trying to draft the next Giannis, you are gonna have to create him in a laboratory or something. Like it's just not coming from humanity ever again.
No, right. Oh gosh.
Well, how much time you got, Jay?
I can give you a good 10 minutes.
Okay, let's do some Twitter questions. Nope.
Twitter questions.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for sending us your TQs. Our first question comes from @Bangelope. Who is the player with the best vibes in the NBA? She votes for Klay Thompson.
Oh man, it's hard to. That's what's so hard about the Warriors, like being the nemesis that the Thunder had in that 2016, 2015 years.
Yeah.
They're a really likable team outside of Draymond Green.
Yeah, they are. And even like listening to Draymond on his podcast or like on TNT, you're like, oh man, he's actually kind of awesome.
Yes. Well, and I mean, everybody goes to like Anthony Edwards as well. I really like two guys I think that are also part of this vibe list. Joel Embiid, I've always loved.
Sure.
I think he's the best maybe troll in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've always liked McCollum. Like just seems like a genuinely great dude and great teammate.
If we're talking just straight vibes, I think it's Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, without question. It's amazing.
He is a vibe himself. He's awesome.
So if you were a Timberwolves fan, what's your level of excitement for your future? Mixed?
I mean, I would be pretty excited for the future. It's going to take some time for them, and they really need to fill out the role players in the right way. Like they need more shooting around them, but like they've got, I don't know if they're championship level, but they're going to be competitive for a long time. Yeah.
I like it. Yep.
If Cat stays healthy and stays there, they'll be good because Cat's been awesome. He was great. He's been great against the Thunder. This one is from @JMS_chemist. This is kind of the same question that you asked me earlier. Here's the scenario. We get Chet and another solid first rounder next year. The projected starting lineup: Shea, Giddey, Chet, JRE, and Dort. The bench rotation: Ty, Trey, Kenny, Muscala. Whoever we get with the Clippers pick, Baisley, small doses of Poku. There's no tanking maneuvers, no rest, no weird lineups or anything like that. Do they get over or under 30 wins?
Man, that was the number that popped in my head as far as like the over under. I would say slightly over.
I think under.
Man, I don't know. This is just, I think it's just two different perspectives on what this team could have been or would be if like.
I mean, like if they got 28 wins, like have 8 more wins than they do right now.
Yeah. I just watched this team beat the Nuggets with like literally Shea and G Leaguers. And I watched, and I know there's games that they are the quintessential team that you don't take serious. Like I get that.
Yes.
I
think
watched the Thunder do that to too many
good
teams.
lineup. I think that Jokic actually would do something. Like if he was like, oh, there's the number 1 pick, Chet Holmgren.
Maybe.
Let me crush him.
Yeah.
Show him what it's like to be a good big man in the NBA. Because like the next night, Jokic is putting up like 40 and 18, when he played against Isaiah Roby, he just took the night off.
I just don't think you're giving Isaiah Roby enough credit. He is absolutely the Jokic killer. So his trade value has skyrocketed for all the teams in the West.
He sees Roby's face and he sees the baby and he thinks, oh, I just can't hurt this little baby.
Apparently, man, and Roby's hard. Like if you were worried about, like, if you played him in a 7-game against him in a 7-game series,
No,
it would
no.
have no problem
Answer
with him,
no. Yeah.
No. What I'm trying to say is, like, he's such a guy you don't pay attention to, where it's like he can kind of stretch, he can kind of move around, he's kind of athletic.
Yeah.
And so, and if you're not paying attention to him, you're not really going to you're not scheming to play against Isaiah Roby.
Nope.
But if you were, it would be the easiest scheme ever if you actually wanted to.
Yeah. Yes, it would be.
And I've been the Roby fan of this podcast for 2 years.
It's true.
And not fan, I mean, I think he is better than Moses Brown.
He's still better than Moses Brown.
That's the extent of my fandom.
Yeah. I mean, it's just they don't play him until they want to lose.
I know.
Is kind of a thing. So let's see. At Ryan Winkle 7, based on what you've seen so far, what is a realistic percentage? Whoops. What is a realistic percentage likelihood that Lindy Waters is a role player on the next good Thunder team? Asking as a hopeful OSU fan.
Man, I don't.
I put it at roughly like 0.0001%. It was around what I would put it at today. He has to be Duncan Robinson-like shooter for it to work.
Yeah, and what's he, 21?
He's a little older.
Yeah.
And the story would have to be similar to Duncan Robinson's, right? Where it's like a undrafted guy who comes in and just shoots 8 or 9 threes a game and he makes 40+%. And you're like, we can't keep this guy off the court. He's mostly shooting off movement, which is why it works for the Heat. And I think Lindy's a good shooter. I don't know that he's a great shooter.
Yeah, and it's hard. Like, it's super early to truly evaluate him. But knowing what we know about his journey to the NBA, like, if he was some hidden gem of that kind of Duncan Robinson level, like, I don't know, surely we would have seen it by now or heard about it or see it. And I think he's going to get the best shot he could possibly get in the NBA at this point with the Thunder. And hearing what Mark even says about him, trying to develop him as a holistic basketball player, like, all of that stuff is good. It's just hard, man. I think he lacks athleticism, although he had an awesome block on Jordan Clarkson. I don't remember who it was, but
yeah, I can't remember who it was.
Yeah, no, but it was amazing. Maybe it was Jordan Clarkson, but I think that there's,
yes.
I think for the Oklahoma homerism for all of us, even though I grew up an OU fan, but it's like, this dude's from Norman, went to OSU, and seems like from like my watching him play basketball, seems like a relatively hard worker and a good dude.
Yeah, definitely.
And, so anyway, it's just one of those things you hope so, but it's probably very, very, very unlikely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very unlikely. I want it to work. Trust me. I've leaned over to people that work for the Thunder during the game. Every time he's in, like, man, I really hope this works. I really do hope this works. I don't think it will, but I hope it does. At OKC Skittles, is Sam Presti more relieved or sad watching the whole situation with Russell play out, especially considering Presti gave him the contract that he has now?
Relieved.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Lakers are going to have to trade an asset to get rid of his contract at this point. So yeah, Sam got out at just the right time. He got, to get assets for Russ, to get the picks and a positive player for Russ feels.
Yeah, it was just the perfect
impossible.
situation.
Yeah,
he just took advantage of it. It's the same thing he did with the Clippers, right? Like, it's the right time.
Yeah,
he just is so savvy as a GM, man. It's unbelievable.
very good.
But he basically capitalized on both GMs in situations where they had to make moves. Daryl Morey, James Harden wants Russ out. Russ wants out. It's, not that Morey always cares about toxicity, but clearly was trending in that direction. All right, we'll take Chris Paul off your hands. Mm-hmm. And you can take Russ, but we need, 2 picks and a pick swap or something like that. It's insane. And then to be able to in addition to that, the Clippers won. What I mean is like they leveraged Kawhi wanting to go there and basically were able to craft a trade for Kawhi and Paul George, like as if they had these two giant superstars to get that haul they got. Unreal.
Yep. Yeah. It is crazy to think about all that they have. And I know like a lot of people factor in like, oh man, this draft is so important. It's going to and it is very important. There's no doubt about that. I don't want to minimize that. But if you think about everything that they still have, and if they can add a big piece in this draft, and then even if they pick like 6th, 7th, 8th, or whatever in the 23 draft, like they may have their core, but there's guys still coming. There's guys that will they will have draft picks for a long time.
Yep.
Trying to figure out what to do with this roster and how to add to it.
Yep.
And
the leverage,
just
those assets, like and we've said this so much, it's obviously going to be white noise to many, but they're not going to add, they literally cannot add every single draft pick to their roster, right? Like they would have like roster changeovers.
You can't have 45 guys on a roster.
You cannot have 45 guys on a roster. So there's going to be a lot of consolidation that goes forward to get up. I think this year you could really see that. I don't know what the Suns pick value is ultimately going to be, like 30th. It's kind of a second basically. But could you do a Clippers Suns pick to move up from 15 or 16, wherever the Clippers lands, to 12 or 11 if somebody's there that you like? There's just tons of options, or a future Clippers first, or a protected Houston, that Houston pick. I don't know. There's just options for them to move up and get the guys they want because of the flexibility. Now, I think the misconception though is the fact that like, well, they have all these assets. They should be able to move from 4 to 1. It's like nobody gives away the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Now this year is potentially a year where there could be that opportunity, since there's such, a divided idea about between Paolo, Jabari, even Jaden Ivey, or if Shaedon Sharpe jumps in and he starts shocking people. And so like there is this space where this year, if you did get 4 and you wanted 2, there's a chance, actually. I think this year more than anybody, because if you have somebody like Orlando that doesn't necessarily need the guy that lands at him, but would take a Jaden Ivey or whoever, like I could see something like that happening. But for the most part, we noticed from last year, like I can't imagine that Sam didn't try to get up and get Mobley. I can't imagine that he didn't.
Yeah.
But the price was outrageous, I'm assuming.
Yeah, as it should have been. Yeah, in this draft, we don't even have any clue who the Thunder have number 1 on their board.
Nope.
We have no idea. And
I can't imagine it's not Chet, but
they could be at 4 and be like, great. Ivy's
who
our
we
number
wanted
1
the whole
guy.
time. Yeah.
That's the guy that we wanted. This is perfect. We don't even have to expend any assets. We get the guy that we wanted. Yeah, I've had 3 draft experts on the Dream Team show over the last month, and each one has given. I've had somebody say that they like Chet the best, Paolo the best, and Jaden Ivey the best. So there's no real consensus as to who's the best guy in this draft. You can, and it's good and bad. It shows
right, because there's not the elite guy, right?
Yeah, there's probably not a generational guy in this draft, which is not great. However, I think it makes it easier if OKC doesn't get lucky for them to move up.
But it does feel like, so I will say this, and then I do have to leave here, but I do think there's not a for sure. Nobody's ever a for sure, but pretty confident Zion was going to be. I think Cade, people felt that way. Anthony Davis, like you can go further down. But I do think if there's anybody that has the generational ceiling, it's Chet. And that's the reason you would pull that trigger.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think Jaden Ivey's got a good chance of being a very good pro.
He reminds me a little bit of Ja Morant, but I think I just want
some Ja there. He definitely
want that to
like
be
Ja.
Yeah, I think that's probably more what it is. Like he's got kind of the longer hair, and he's kind of got that
head. Would the Ja comparison happen as much?
I know, but he's got a little bit of that scuttlebutt, like that kind of the way he plays, super aggressive, seems high energy, kind of like Ja. And Ja is. And now I really do have to go, but Andrew and I are both going to be at the game on Sunday night when the Grizzlies come to town. And it's
Yeah.
like, we become those fans where it's like, hey, man, I literally live and die for the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I am really far more jacked to watch the Grizzlies play on Sunday night.
I know, I am too. I was like, I got to take my kids to go see Ja Morant. Like they have to. My 9 and my 3-year-old won't remember it at all, but like my 9 and 7-year-old is like, we got to see Ja live. Guys.
And I'll never forget getting to see Desmond Bane's short arms in person.
That's right. We get to see
it's super
T-Rex
noticeable
in real life.
Yeah. He really does have short arms. All right, I got to go. Thanks everybody for your questions. Andrew, it's all you, man.
See you, Jay.
See you, dude.
All right, let's answer some more questions from Twitter. Our next question comes from Rob Whitrock. He wants to know, on Earth, are there more doors or are there more wheels? Wow. I've never thought about this ever. I guess more wheels, but there's an awful lot of doors. I'm thinking about the amount of doors in my house. I definitely have more doors in my house than I have wheels. So I guess I'll go with doors. You think of like high-rise buildings, right? There's an awful lot of cars. At Dortpoi, who are you rooting for in the West play-in? I am rooting for, I want the Timberwolves in. Right now it would be Timberwolves Clippers. Give me the Timberwolves to get the 7th seed. Like Timberwolves Grizzlies would be really fun. That would be a really fun series. And then the Clippers would play the winner of Pelicans Lakers. Give me a Lakers Clippers play-in game. And I would certainly prefer the Lakers to win that game and the Clippers bounce out and into the lottery. Give me that. That's what I'm rooting for. That's the scenario I want. And then you have Lakers Suns and the Suns embarrass the Lakers. That's what I want. That's what I want. All right. Next question from Zach Deeg. Say OKC lands in the 5 to 8 range. Thoughts on actually trading back? Trading back! Oh boy. To the 9 to 15 range to add assets, then cash in some chips to move up in a much better 23 draft. Come away with 2 top 10 picks in that loaded draft and still have assets going forward. The problem is just assuming you can move up in the 23 draft, I think is not the right move. I think that that's why you have to rely on your own picks, is because you can't reasonably rely on other teams screwing up, especially in a draft that everybody knows is loaded, where bad teams are going to be less likely to move those picks because everyone's going to talk about how great this draft is. Like, oh, well, we can't move our pick. We can't do that. We got to take whoever's there. I mean, so I think you take who is ever in the 5 to 8 range. And there's some guys I'm warming up to in that range. Like if Shaden Sharp's in that range, Sam will have the guts to take him if he thinks he's the best guy. AJ Griffin, I'd rather have him than trade back. The problem with like the 15 range is, one, you already have a pick in that range. 2, goodness, like where's the real like swing for the fences talent? Like that's just not there. Like you got the 2 Baylor guys, Kendall Brown, Jeremy Sohan. Like those aren't swing for the fences guys. They've got some potential, certainly. I don't know, like Dyson Daniels. Like, I don't know, is that not doing anything for you? That's where I'm just like Mark Williams is in that range. I don't know, man. This draft, it gets pretty flat pretty fast. And so to take 2 guys in the flattened range, I would be scared to. Whenever like there's clear talent in a Shaden Sharp, AJ Griffin, Keegan Murray's got a ton of talent. You know, Johnny Davis, who's struggled recently, but like he's still got a ton of talent. Like I would lean more toward those guys than I would feel comfortable taking somebody else. And I just would trust Sam and his team scouting. at this point to gain an advantage, because in a lot of years there's just talent all over the place. In this draft, I think that there's going to be pockets of talent. I think there is going to be a pocket of talent in the mid first round. That's just not it is that's where it's like a slot machine. It's like the Poku slot machine there, where you're either win the prize or you lose your life savings. That's what's going to happen in the middle of the first round. So I'd rather pick toward the top. They did a great job getting Josh where they did. I'd rather give them a chance to do that again than trade back and have it's just way more uncertain, right? And everything with the draft is uncertain, like everything. But thinking you can trade up is I think might be a little bit foolish. At Sticky Wizard 00 has Baisley reached close to his ceiling. His offensive game doesn't really have to do with how well he plays. He does the same three things: spin, long stride reverse, jab step 3 every single game. I think it more has to do with if the other team watched film with him at all. Miffed and peeved. He still needs to, like you said, like he's got to be a guy. Like we've talked about it all season. Like he needs to be on the Jeremy Grant plan, where it's like, hey, you defend the rim, you rebound, and then you shoot corner threes and you clean up around the basket. And I think that's where he's going to be, because he's not a good offensive player. He's just not. And if he's ever going to be a rotation player for a good team, he just has to hit corner threes. Period. He has to. And if he can't, I just don't know that he's an NBA player or more than like your 9th or 10th guy that you just have on the roster because he's athletic and he has a really good agent. And that might be it. At Brighton Schmidt, let's say in 5 or 6 years, the Thunder are competing for a championship. Who do we get as our Derek Fisher, the old vet who can come in and make a difference for this team? The hope is that you don't have to rely on a guy like Derek Fisher like the Thunder did years ago, that you have enough first-round picks to be able to trade for like a real rotation player, and that you don't have to count on a bought-out Derek Fisher. Now, if you're going to imagine somebody who could still be in the league then that's super old, like if Kyle Lowry's still in the league, that would be a really fun one years from now. I'm trying to think of anybody else that would be fun to have as a old man to come in here and play big minutes. I mean, that's the only name that comes to mind. But again, the hope is that you can bring in a guy who's in his like 30s, 32 and ready to contribute and costs a first rounder. And you've got plenty of them. So that's part of why you stockpile picks too, is not just for the draft, but for team building purposes when you have the team that you like. Let's see. At Midnight Ross, if it's impossible to tank next year and Presti realizes it, who's still on this team? It's impossible to tank. We can go down that road. We've been talking about that quite a bit. But we can talk about it a little bit more. Who's definitely on the team if they're trying to win? Let's say they're like, hey, let's go for the play-in. We just think that we've got a competitive group and we want to get them at least a taste of what a playoffs or a play-in could look like. So Shea, Dort, Giddey, definitely. Kenrich, Trey, JRE, Wiggins, for sure. Poku is still going to be on the team. Whether or not he's in the competitive portion of the team, I don't know. Darius will likely be here. And then, I mean, that's the only guys I feel super confident about. So Shea, Dort, Giddey, Darius, Wiggins, Jeremiah, Kenrich, Trey, Poku. That's 9. That's probably the guys. And then everybody else, like, are they going to bring back Roby? And what do they do with Favors this summer? Ty Jerome, same question. Do they feel confident enough in Veet and what he's done? Lindy, Maladone, I guess Muscala, maybe that's 10. Muscala will probably be back. So, and I'm naming 10 guys that will likely be back anyways, regardless of what the plan is. And this is a 20-win team as of today. I just don't. I'm still just of the mind that they're just not going to be competitive next season. So I may be wrong. I've been wrong plenty of times. Let's see. At Jam or Rudd, Jamo Rudd, I don't know. Which is more miserable, cheering for losses from a team that's too good to tank, or cheering for wins from a team that's too bad to win? Dude, I've been here before. We've been here. We've had both scenarios in Oklahoma City, right? And it's without a doubt, this is the mellow year of the Thunder, where they were too bad to win. And I remember a specific game they lost to the Celtics in Boston where they had the game in the bag. And I can't remember what the circumstances were. I'm sure some of you guys do, but like Melo basically gave the game away, and it was maddening. that team was tough. That was the is this fun debate year for the podcast. And it was not fun. And it's way worse than this has been, because in your head, when the team wins games, like when they won that game against Denver, or they won that game in New York, like, can you really be that mad? Like, I was probably pretty mad about the Denver win, but the one at MSG where it's Giddey and Trey Mann winning you games, like, how mad can you actually be? I don't know. Can't be that mad. Can't be that mad about it. So it's definitely when your team is trying to go for it and you're still like the 7th seed or whatever, and you have the talent of the 2nd seed, and you're just that's miserable, because there's no like justification for it. You can at least justify like, oh, they picked the right guys in the draft. Woohoo, whatever. Let's see. We'll do a couple more. Alex Bullerjack wants to know, would you rather have 2 left feet or 2 left hands? Definitely feet. Although I would not enjoy that. But 2 left hands, I couldn't live my life that way. I'd be miserable. Let's see. Lots of good questions here. At Snake Shooting wants to know the best kind of juice. He's a big cranberry fan. I'm a big orange juice guy, especially if it's fresh squeezed. There's actually a Sam's Club over here off May Avenue that has, I don't know if it's still there or not. I haven't been there in a minute, but they had like real oranges on site that they were just fresh squeezing in this machine, and they would create this just incredible orange juice. It's the best. It's the very best. Shout out to the orange juice maker at Sam's Club. Let's see. At Wit CT, after looking at the Athletics 40 under 40, I'm wondering if there's anyone in OKC's franchise behind the scenes that you think deserves some more shine. Presti deserves his credit, but he's not working alone. Yeah, I mean, the guy, Will Dawkins, is a guy that they mentioned on there. He's been with the organization forever and was hired as basically a guy right out of college. And he's tremendous. There are a lot of guys. You were right. And I don't even know if Sam enjoys positioning himself as like the guy for this team. Maybe he does. I really have no idea. However, he's got a team of guys that are incredible. In fact, like the first time I ever met Sam in person was at, where was I? It was in Yukon. They did the blue and white scrimmage at Yukon High School, which is now Yukon Middle School. But it was the high school back then, and they played the blue and white game there. And I saw Sam outside, and he was walking along, and I ran up to him and wanted to introduce myself to him, and he immediately introduced me to the other guys in the front office that were with him. He's like, "Oh, have you met so and so, or do you know who so and so is?" And he was like very much like all about like making sure that people knew who these other guys were. So there's the credit. The credit starts with Sam, honestly, and it starts with ownership. But there are a lot of brilliant people that work for the Thunder, and Sam is a big reason why he finds the right people. I mean, they found Mark Daigneault like buried under a rock. You just think about the journey that he's had to take. It's pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable to think about the journey that he's taken and how many other teams would have recognized a guy like Mark and brought him in and made him their head coach. It's not very many teams that would do that. I mean, you think about the guys who have been recently hired, like a Chauncey Billups. Not that hard to identify that Chauncey Billups has like a good head on his shoulders when it comes to basketball. You're talking about a guy that wasn't even like a top assistant at Florida, who they offered him the blue job and came up here. They developed him. I mean, we think about the Blue as a team that develops players, but they've certainly developed coaches too. And they've developed a guy up to the level of an NBA coach. That's Sam's vision. It was very unique. And most teams just don't do this. Most teams don't do it. And he does the same thing with front office people. He identifies the right kind of people, the right kind of talent. And it's not just basketball talent. It's throughout the organization. It's a very impressive group. There's no doubt about that. Let's see. We'll go maybe a couple more. At CS1701406. Does Shea's recent play make you even slightly consider trading Josh for a more offensive-oriented player? Does not. We have to stop doing this as a fan base. We did this with Shea whenever Giddey was playing well. Now we're doing it with Giddey when Shea plays well. Listen, let's just enjoy them both. Eventually, we will enjoy them both. I don't know if it'll be this season. We are waiting on an update on Josh's status on his hip. I hope that he plays, but the answer is both. We need both. They want multiple ball handlers in the offense. They don't just want one. They've made that clear, and it's both. That's the answer to that one. Let's see. At Kiwi Thunder fan, are we concerned with the growth of Roby? Not the growth of his game, but physically. He's jacked in his big boy body, but his face has not hit puberty yet, and I can't unsee that he has a baby's face. He does. He's got a baby face. He really does. Am I concerned? Slightly concerned. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. Thankful that we get to watch sports. We get to watch this team. Still a couple of days off for the Thunder. We get to watch them Sunday against the Grizzlies. So enjoy that. Then they have a back-to-back where they play the Charlotte Hornets in town as well. So, all right. Thanks so much. We will talk to you guys again on Monday.